Om Gam Ganapatye Namaha. Kaliyugada Kalpataru. Fourth Delight. Sri Vyasa Yati Sarvabhouma. Chapter 35. The Atonement of Brahmahatya Sin. Shortly after ascending the throne, King Sulva of Kannada Nadu was struck by the misfortune of becoming afflicted with the Brahmahatya dosha, sin of killing a Brahmin, a consequence of past karmic misdeeds. This was triggered by the actions of the learned and self-discipled Sri Tatacharya, who, after assigning the responsibility of Tirupati's temple administration to his kin, had departed from Tirupati. His kin, however, abused their entrusted authority, misappropriating the temple's treasury, gold, garments, and ornaments for personal use. Sri Venkateshwara's vehicles were even employed in the children's wedding and sacred thread ceremonies. They harassed and expelled anyone who opposed their behavior, barring them from having darshan of the deity. This conduct caused significant discontent among the devotees and locals, creating widespread unease. King Narasimha, a devout follower of Lord Venkateshwara, upon learning of these transgressions, initially issued a stern warning to the priests, instructing them to cease their misuse of temple's resources and administer fairly. Despite his advice, the priests continued with their misdeeds. Matter escalated when royal representatives witnessed the temple's golden Garuda Vahana being used in a wedding procession at the priest's residence and reported this to the king. Infuriated by the sacrilege, the king ordered the arrest of all offending priests. Fearing punishment, the priests defied royal orders. In their fear and defiance, they conspired to take their own lives in an act of vigilance against the king. On that night, all the priests, along with their women, children, and elders, committed mass suicide. The following day, when soldiers arrived to apprehend the priests, they discovered the tragedy. They returned to the capital and informed the king. Deeply distressed, King Narasimha lamented, "Though I entered only to ensure justice and righteousness, temple service, fate has conspired otherwise. Now I bear the burden of sin of Brahmahatya. What have I done?" The mass suicide of the priest weighed heavily on the king. He stopped consuming food and water and began to suffer from the haunting presence of the priest's spirits. The spirits, seeking vigilance, tormented the king day and night, reducing him to a frail state, burdened by his agony. Governance of the kingdom ceased, causing alarm among his family, ministers, and close confidants. After deliberating, they resolved on the advice of the king to seek the interventions of Sri Lakshminarayana Muni at Mulabagalu. The ministers and confidants traveled to Mulabagalu and narrated the dire situation to the revered sage, pleading for the salvation of the king and the kingdom. Deeply moved by the plight of his devoted disciples, Sri Lakshminarayana Muni assured them, "Do not worry. By the grace of Lord Harivayu, we shall rescue the king from this plight." Upon his arrival at the palace, the sage was greeted by the bedridden king, who with great effort rose and welcomed his guru. Overwhelmed with grief, King Narasimha wept and prostrated at the feet of the sage, who, filled with compassion, blessed him, saying, "Do not fear, O king. By the grace of Lord Gopinatha Rangavitala, all your afflictions shall be resolved, and you shall regain your former glory." The sage conducted special prayers and rituals at the palace, invoking divine blessings. He then prepared sanctified holy water, that is tirtha, and sprinkled it on the king, who felt an extraordinary energy coursing through his body. The sage instructed the king to change into fresh garments, while his own clothes were placed before the sage. Upon sprinkling holy water on the old garment, they instantly ignited and were reduced to ashes. At that moment, the spirits of the priests appeared before the sage, remorsefully and repentant. They pleaded, "O Great One, we acted rashly and now seek your compassion. Please liberate us from this wretched existence as spirits and grant us salvation." Moved by their plea, the sage declared, "You shall no longer trouble the king. In due time, through the grace of Lord Pranadeva and my disciples, your lineage shall once again resume worship at Tirupati." The sage's prophecy indeed came true. Under the guidance of Sri Vyasaraja Tirtharu, the priest's descendants regained their rights to worship Lord Venkateshwara. The priest's spirits, freed from the torment, vanished after expressing their gratitude. The king was restored to health within days. Regaining his vigor and splendor, over the course of a week, the sage conducted various rituals to ensure the king's peace and well-being. King Narasimha, deeply grateful, resumed his duties with renewed zeal and devotion. News of sage's intervention spread far and wide, and his compassion and miraculous powers were lauded by all. However, some envious scholars questioned the efficacy of the sage's methods, arguing that the sin of Brahmahatya could not be absolved through the mere sprinkling of holy water. To address the skeptics, the sage summoned them before the king and posed a challenge. He asked for a piece of white cloth and soaked it in indelible black dye, then placed it before the scholars, asking if they could restore it to original pristine state. The scholars admitted their inability. The sage then prepared sanctified holy water and sprinkled it on the cloth. To everyone's astonishment, the cloth regained its original whiteness. The skeptic witnessed this divine miracle, acknowledged the sage's extraordinary spiritual power, and sought his forgiveness. King Narasimha, witnessing the sage's greatness, was overwhelmed with reverence and gratitude. He requested the sage to remain in the kingdom and guide him further. The sage graciously agreed, ensuring the king and kingdom flourished under his guidance. Om Hari Om. Om Sri Krishnarpanamastu.